like to start off today's series of lectures with a series of halachas which I would have imagined probably when I moved here to Eretz Yisrael that there would be no need for this subject to be discussed. But because of the advancement of technology making the world a small place, the question of living amongst Jews does not mean that you actually live amongst Jews. I'll just start with a question that happened not long ago in a high-tech office in Yerushalayim. That high-tech office is a subdivision of an international conglomerate. The bosses of the company, non-Jews, came to have a meeting with the staff of the local place, and there's a question about dining together with non-Jews, majorities, not majorities, what can be done. And the person who realized the question, he went to ask one of the senior dayanim here in Eretz Yisrael as to how they should proceed. And that dayan said, the truth of the matter is, I know where that halacha is in Shulchan Aruch. I can even tell you what the Noisei Kelim say about it. But I didn't really learn it so much halacha l'maisa, because where would that be relevant in the world that we live today? I'd have to check it out. But that's in yesteryear, probably the last centennial. Nowadays we understand that the farthest place away is just a click away. And therefore, we live actually in an international world right in front of our screen. Because of that, businesses, interactions have changed in a way that it has to be understood on a global level, not just a local level. And just to mention, from the questions which I get asked many times from the United States, Europe, one of the questions which is the most vexing and difficult to answer, because it has to do with the environment that people live in, is it permissible or forbidden to go to a business meeting in a restaurant that's not kosher? I was in New York City probably about 20 years ago, and I was davening together in a minyan that there's a Jew who's a multimillionaire. And at that time, the trip which I took to the United States, I flew Alitalia, and he asked me, which airlines did you fly? I said, I flew Alitalia. He said, where'd you stop? I stopped in Milano. He said, I was just in Milano on a business meeting. The business meeting was done in the airport, and there's a kosher operation going on over there. So I said, tell me about it. He said, well, in the restaurant, upstairs, there's a kosher kitchen that only the mashgiach has the keys to. And when there's an important business meeting that there are Orthodox Jews that come, the mashgiach goes upstairs, opens the kitchen, supervises the cook, the chef from downstairs comes upstairs, produces a replica menu, and we all eat together on the same china, in the same restaurant, me glatt kosher, and him glatt treif. And he was very proud of this, and I said, in my opinion, it is an Isser Gomer to do that. Now, this man looked at me a little bit sympathetic and cross-eyed. He said, you must be one of those zealots from Yerushalayim. So I said, come with me now, we'll go to the Rav, and ask the Rav of the shul. We go to the Rav of the shul, and I asked him the question. He said, sounds to me like it's Usser. So here we have, again, I'm not posketing for world Jewry, but here we have situations which I think that many of us would have considered that out of the realm of a reality, that 20 years ago this was already going on. So a person has to be aware and savvy about many aspects of interactions that have become lax because people are just not aware. Not because people don't care, they're not aware, because we found ourselves in a Jewish environment, and therefore the laws that have to do with non-Jews seem to have fallen away to a certain extent, and it is reappearing, and therefore I feel that it's important, living al Masenu HaKadoshah, that this week's Parsha Kedoshim discusses how we have to set ourselves apart, demands indeed that we set ourselves apart. I would like to start off with a thought. Happened to me again on a trip. And I would like to say in this thought that when this happened, a Gemara that is very famous came to mind. Again, I was flying internationally, and this way, at that time, the cheap ticket was through Greece. And I went to Greece. I actually didn't go to Greece. I went to the airport, so to speak. And there was a layover, and there were a bunch of Israelis that were there that they decided that we'll rent together a taxi and we'll go sightseeing for X amount of time. We had a 10-hour layover or something like that. And it was affordable. They asked me if I was willing to come with them. And I said, I'll go with. Fine. I didn't really think about much in advance about the Avodah Zaras that there are in Greece. It wasn't just on the top list of things in my mind. And as we had to go to certain places, there were certain places that I abstained and I just stayed out. In the course of the conversation, I was speaking with a woman many years ago. She must have been at that time 60, 65, who came to Israel as a small child, a war survivor. And she said that she was brought up more or less religious, and she eventually discarded it and became a secular Jew, and she doesn't really keep much. Okay, this is just one window of our interaction. When we're leaving the hotel, they asked us, would you like to take with you something to eat? I obviously said no. And many of these Jews said, we'll take a salad. No problem with Trumas or Meisers. Take a salad, just vegetables. And there we were in the wilderness, and this woman who doesn't keep anything all of a sudden shrieks over to her and saying, what happened? And she's pointing an accusing finger at her sandwich. Look! And somebody opens up her sandwich, and there was a piece of bologna inside. And she said, Habasar shalahem? I can't eat that. There's a woman who just said, a short time beforehand, she doesn't observe anything. And the Gemara says, Afilu, those who are non-observant are Malay and Mitzvahs Karimo. The non-observant are more observant many times than they profess themselves. She was mortified by the fact that she was nichshal in something that she would never do. I only asked for vegetables, but it was only a small piece of meat. So here we have kind of situations that people assume, and because they assume, they sometimes fall into situations which are undesirable. This is not only true in these kind of dramatic situations. Many times I'm asked about going to our course, going to court. I'm not going to give a shir on the subject because it's a very, very complicated series of halachas. I think it suffices to say that in Shulchan Aruch it says a person who does so is, so to speak, he's a kofer in many, many things. And there's an interesting halacha in Shulchan Aruch. A person who went to our course could not serve as a chazan in a shul. There's a discussion as to what about nowadays, a discussion whether there's a difference in Yom Rishon and Yom Kippur. And I would like to share with you a story that happened with me, with somebody from this community, about going to Arkos. Going to Arkos does not discuss exclusively non-Jewish courts. On the contrary, possibly even more, it discusses legal systems that are run by Jews not according to Allah. This man came to me and he said he has a problem. His father-in-law took somebody to court knowing that it's forbidden to be done. And my wife, he says, just had a baby boy. And my father-in-law would like to be the moil. He's qualified to be a moil. He went to Arkos. I don't want my father-in-law to be the moil of my son. Somebody who has something so tainted on his neshama, I don't want that he should be performing the bris on my son. He said, Me'idach, this is my father-in-law, and there's a social and family aspect too. Could be I could get away if I had him be Sandik. Rabbi Zachariash, what do I do? So I said, you ask somebody who knows. So he said, okay, you got a job. And I went to ask somebody who knows. I went to ask a person who's very fluent in these aspects of Yiddishkeit. And he took me by the hand and he said to me, "Was fragst du solche schwere Scheides? Why are you asking such difficult questions?" And he thought about it for a long time, and we discussed the question, and we came to the conclusion as to which was the lesser of the two evils. But this is just a story that I'm sharing with you as to how serious these things are, and people assume courts, they're Jewish. Not only is it not permissible to go to court, to support somebody in court, to be a lawyer in certain kinds of situations is also forbidden. I asked a rabbi in New York City who he teaches in Yeshiva University. I asked him, was he ever asked by students what aspects of law are they allowed to learn and practice? He said, I tell them very clearly what you're allowed to and what you're not allowed to do. But this is clear. The people who are aware, and people who are not aware. And many times we find ourselves in conflicting situations, and one must know how to proceed. I will just give one such example. I'm not here to say stories, but these are situations that arise, and I believe all of them, one can learn from them to circumstances which could happen to them. This person is a lawyer in England, and the company that uses him as a consultant has branches in Israel and in England. And there was a lady who worked in the store who was becoming a Balas Tshuva, and according to her contract, she has to work on Shabbos. And he was called to be advised. According to English law, it's not American law, according to English law, in certain circumstances, if the person is not replaceable, the company has a right to force the person to work or to release the person from their position. And his question to me was, am I allowed to give advice professionally against halacha? I get asked these questions from therapists. I get asked these questions from doctors. Just 2 days ago, I had a halachic medical question where the discussion revolved around that being that this question of this procedure is under machlokes, possibly the operation should be done through Amira La'akum and have a guy perform the surgery. These are a few examples of right here in Eretz Yisrael, and I'll just mention from the questions that I've been asked many times in Ramat Beit Shemesh. Sometimes people have pets and they would like to perform surgeries on them which are forbidden. These are serious questions, and the person has to know how it can or cannot be done in a way that is mutter al pi halacha. I'd like to go back to my trip to Greece. A person goes by a place which was Avodah Zarah, which was destroyed. There's something to be said. A person goes by, in my opinion, probably should be said, somebody travels the Bika, and you can see the refugee camps of 67, I don't know what I'll call it, before or after, which became desolate. There's what to be said. There's what to be said. What to be said. People who go on sightseeing tours have to keep in mind that there are halachas that are relevant. Places of Avodah Zarah could be forbidden to be entered. And I would just like to say over one story that happened to me in Yerushalayim, which brings the past and the future very closely together. I had a situation that I had to be in the home of a highly cultural Jew, secular Jew, who left Israel in the 30s to the 40s to go to study in Europe. And he came back after 48 as an archaeologist. And on his coffee table, there was this golden cow. A small golden cow. And I asked him, where'd you get that from? And he looked me in the eye and he said, I stole it. Okay, that's like an elchiyit. Anyways, I said to him, where did you steal it from? He said, I was on an excavation in the north and we uncovered this. It's pure gold and I stole it. So I asked him, do you know what this is? He says, of course I know what this is. I'm not an Amoritz. These are the idols of the tribes of Yisrael that were put in the north so that people should not go to the Beis HaMikdash. This is an Avodah Zarah Shel Yisrael that never had bittul, and it's Asur B'Hana. He didn't say that part. This part I'm filling you in on. And here it is on his coffee table in Yerushalayim just a few short years ago. Avodah Zarah is Asur B'Hana. These are not halachas of an archaic time. These are halachas that exist in the world that we live today. If you're not aware, you wouldn't be aware. And that's why I'm here today. Because people go on tiyulim, people go places, people want to get a drink and they want to walk into a monastery. Are you allowed to? Are you not allowed to? These are halachas which have to be learned for a person to go, even on a pleasure trip. Here in Eretz Yisrael, every step that you take is enveloped in halacha. It's a wonderful thing. A goy makes a bracha. May you answer Amen or not? There's a machlokes. And many times, this has happened. You find yourself in a situation where there are people that are goyim, that are with the crowd, and they mimic that which is going on, and they demand that you answer. Halacha l'maisa, generally speaking, it's permissible to be done, but it's also a question that depends on many pratim. There is a machlokes haposkim about something which is very, very interesting. Things which are forbidden to be eaten, it is forbidden for a Jew to do mischar with them, to be involved in commerce. A friend of mine, his father is a prominent Rav in Borough Park, got a phone call one day, Rabbi, I want to buy on the futures exchange pork bellies. Is it permissible or not? You have 2 minutes to answer the question. That's not an ultimatum. That's the slot. His father, for some reason, wasn't so proficient on all the ins and outs, and he called him back 3 minutes later. He said it's not relevant anymore. When a person buys commodities, he's actually taking possession, or is he not taking possession? This is a serious question, and this question is relevant throughout many things. Just this week, over Pesach, we had a question about someone buying something on the internet, and it was chametz, and whose was it when it's in transit? Does it belong to the seller? Does it belong to the buyer? Delivery was made on Chol Hamoed. Is it permissible to be eaten or not? The person has to know. Each aspect is very important. I'd like to say a thought about today's generation. And yes, it's true that one may outsmart the system. There are loopholes. But those loopholes are not there to be used on an ongoing basis. Chazal instituted certain halachos. They instituted pas akum, bishul akum, stam yenom, a whole host of halachos to keep Jews separate from goyim. We have overcome that obstacle. We have Yaim Avushal, and we have somebody turn on the fire, and we have overcome all the difficulties so that we could sit down by a meal together with goyim. So what have we done? We have played into the Yetzer Hara's hands. Now again, I am not right now discussing what a person should do in a regular situation, certain situations, but we have to understand that these laws were put into place to create a safeguard, and when you're tearing away the safeguard, in a sense you're undermining the system. Again, the person has to know when and where, but I'm just pointing this out. I was asked a question once by a man who travels to the Far East on business. Now, people who travel to the Far East on business would know what I'm talking about. The only reason why I know what I'm talking about is I have friends who travel to the Far East on business. It's not to be believed, we'll say, the level of integrity that doesn't exist. And it's not to be believed the primitiveness of certain aspects of their society. A friend of mine told me, depending on who uses the hotel, a person would like to eat certain kinds of shrimp or things like that that have to be instant boiled. Many of the natives, when they go to the 5-star hotel, they use the kumkum chashmali, just throw it in. Okay? So if somebody would ask me, you're in Nevada, in a hotel, in the kumkum chashmali, if you could use it, I'd say, why not? That's probably what I would say. Maybe I'd ask a question or two a little bit savvier today than I was a few years ago. But I don't think that in mid-America we have to be choishish that people are doing such things. And I would say it's permissible. Not necessarily so. Again, I'm not saying what the halacha is in the Far East. I will just say that if I was asked that question about in Nevada in 2 or 3 years from now, I probably would say that it's probably not so simple that it's permissible. And I'll tell you what. There's a new device which is becoming very popular. People have food in vacuum-packed packages, and you dip this kind of a heating element into the water, and it cooks the food exactly right. And people will use whatever receptacle they have available to them. They carry this with them and have food to go wherever they are. A person is going to be in such a place. Is he going to use such a thing or not? I don't know. In 2 years' time, I'll maybe have a better idea. But again, we live in a world that things change, that you can't assume that that which was be'emes correct 10 years ago is current today. So here we have questions about drinking coffee on the roadside. In general, the accepted opinion of most of the poskim, and I would say Klal Yisrael throughout the generations, is that you can have a coffee on the roadside. One doesn't have to be choishish for any problem of mecholas asuris. That is more or less true. What I will say is that nowadays, with the advent of flavored coffees, many of the coffee dispensers dispense also coffees that are not kosher at different times. So I heard from a mashkiach who was speaking about Starbucks. It's an international organization, and he said according to his research, and I'm not responsible for what I'm saying right now, I'm saying over what I heard. According to his research, regular coffee and regular decaffeinated coffee from Starbucks can be purchased everywhere. All the other flavored Starbucks coffee, even if it's a flavor that has a hechsher, that does not mean that that utensil wasn't used just a few short hours ago for a different flavor that's not kosher. There are things that are actually not kosher, and if there is no hechsher on that particular Starbucks, so there's no guarantee that a treifa pot wasn't used for producing that coffee, and we'll just leave that as an open question. But if you just drink the regular coffee or the regular decaffeinated, that those are continuously used for the same thing. So according to his research, there's no reason to assume that was anything else put into them. All right. Together with Goyim, he discusses the idea that we should be separated, and even things which are permissible to do, not to do together with Goyim, because that's part of our Kedoshim Tiyu aspect. The person who has workers that are non-Jewish, and he's obligated to serve them a meal, there's a question in the poskim as to it's permissible for him to serve them non-kosher food. That means he wants to serve his workers a supper. Can he actually have them give them money to go and buy something in a non-kosher restaurant or not? This is a question of the poskim. I would just say that most of the poskim, Shulchan and others, are of the more lenient opinion. However, there's a machlokes poskim on this issue. I'd like to say over something a little bit funny, but it's indeed serious. A friend of mine who's a little bit OCD called me up once, and he says, my daughter told me that she used a dirty milchige spoon and stirred something fleishiks with. So, with my warped sense of humor, I asked him, how old is your daughter? He said, 10. So I said, don't worry about it. He says, why not? I said, she's not believed. She's only 10 years old. She's a ketana. The food has a cheskas kashrus. So who says that she can make a shayla? So he said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Not necessarily, but this is a question which is seriously discussed, and it's discussed about non-Jews also. A non-Jew. This is a true story. A person had a layover in Germany at the airport, and the airlines gave him a voucher to buy some food in the local store. And what could you buy? So he went in and he bought an apple and a pear. And he ate the apple and the pear, and they were unbelievably tasty. So when he left, he commented to the cashier. He said, "You know, that fruit that you have is really tasty. Where does it come from?" He said, "Well, we treat it, we soak it in wine." It's a true story. So that's called Masich Lefi Tumah. I talk about Issa D'Oraisa and Issa D'Rabbanan. Can he have seconds? Can't he have seconds? So this is a question which is discussed in the Poskim, and in many situations the halacha is that the guy has nemanis, and in many situations he doesn't have nemanis. This is a specialty field. Again, should be aware of it. Just because the guy told you something, whether he told you it's mutter doesn't mean anything, whether he told you it's asur doesn't mean anything. You have to ask a Rav Shayla in those cases. Moshe Feinstein writes in a tshuva about people who go to the mountains and they have their cleaning help come in to set up for them when they're coming back. They tell the cleaning lady, "We're planning to come back, going away for 2 weeks, you don't have to come this week, we're planning to come back on Sunday, so please come in on Thursday or Friday to make sure that the house is dusted," or whatever. This, Bepashis, is asur to do. It is forbidden to leave a non-Jew in an environment with our kosher utensils that he has access to and could use them. In a yeshiva here in Eretz Yisrael that has officially a mashgiach tamidi, the mashgiach tamidi came into the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning and found the foreign workers cooking their meat on the yeshiva's utensils. This happened 2 years ago here in Eretz Yisrael. In the yeshiva with hundreds and hundreds of bachrim, and after researching, it wasn't the first time it happened. Okay? So people know, you have to really know what the halacha is, when somebody can leave something with a goy or not. And the halacha extends actually, even if you give your utensil to a goy to fix, possibly you have to be choishish that he used it. From the questions that I get asked about people who have non-Jewish workers, ozeretz in their homes, is they open the refrigerator and there was a bottle of wine in the refrigerator. I'd like to make a statement, a general statement. Most people store their wine with the cap on. I think that's a relatively safe statement. If the cap was on, even if the guy handled the wine, even if the guy shook the wine, as long as we don't have any other, a regular guy, a regular situation, one does not have to be concerned at all. If a guy was left in the house, whether there was wine in the house, meat in the house, or a pot in the house, the question revolves around, is there a possibility that the guy used it or not? If there is a nichnas v'yotze, that means that the person could come at any time, that would be sufficient. But there is no nichnas v'yotze, like the case I spoke about, the person's up in the mountains, then it becomes a serious issue. I would like to, in conclusion, I would like to quote 2 pieces of Igros Moshe, which I think are central to ideas of living together with Goyim and finding their ideas influencing us in the way that we live. These ideas are not relevant to us here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, but we all recognize them. Some of us may even have a nice piece of nostalgia in thinking about them. And we should realize that the reason why we're here is to move on, not to keep it there. The first is about the double ring ceremony at a wedding. Moshe Feinstein takes great pains to write a long tshuva on the subject, and he obviously forbids it. And he says as follows: it's forbidden for a variety of reasons. First of all, he says, if this is the practice of the goyim, if it's a minig, if that's the way the goyim do their marriage ceremony, and we're duplicating that service, shu iser midoraisa. In other words, we're not really discussing whether the kedushin is valid or not. Could be the kedushin is valid, but making the tekes, which is a tekes of goyim, is an iser deraisa. Afilo eino chok l'avodah zarah. Even though it's not a religious thing, it's just a cultural thing. Elochoik hevel v'shtus. It's something which has no real meaning, and he brings proof to this, etc. And then he goes on to say, a person who does so, it's going to cause shikchas haTorah, and it causes a bilbul, and we should make sure that we do not lace our ceremonies with things that come from secular places. A beautiful tshuva, if someone would like to see it, it's worthwhile. The second tshuva, which I'd like to read, there are many people here who bemoan the loss of Sunday. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about. Those same people, when I hear that from them, I say, do you appreciate Friday in Eretz Yisrael? Anybody comes from Chutz La'aretz, I was blessed, so to speak, to be brought up at the end of a time zone. So Shabbos, even in the winter, didn't start at noontime. But those who live in New York, and you work in Manhattan, if you have to go home for Shabbos, it's a real race. It's a real white knuckle situation. Even if your boss lets you off. I'm not talking about the Nisayan of Shmira Shabbos. But Sunday, people miss Sunday. We all know where Sunday came from. Many of you probably know what the blue laws are, to know what Sunday's about. But I'd like to read a tshuva nigras Moshe. Why are we here today? The reason we are here today is today is a day people aren't working. So what do you do on vacation? You learn. What is a yeshiva boy, an elementary school boy, supposed to do on a day off? Could we expect him to learn? How much? Let's be realistic. I don't know if any of you have children. So I would like to read to you a nigras Moshe. He pens off a letter. I heard that there was a motion made by some of the parents to have the day school be closed on Sunday for Limudei Kodesh. And Rav Moshe writes to the board of the day school. B'dvar eitza levatel halimudim b'yom rishon. Shu bittul Torah b'mea talmidim. It's bittul Torah. V'gam mekalkel. It's not a good idea. Habatola es gufam v'nafshoisam. Giving kids free time. Ki ma yaseh haben shlo yechte. What's he going to do that's permissible? Shu yoshev bato. Kasher einenu royes. I don't think I have to do much convincing. This is obvious. V'ech she'niskalkel yom rom b'shila batola u'lehepoch. Keshelomdu eize shos b'yom rishon limudei kodesh. When you have a day of cheder, of just limudei kodesh, dover gadol hazeh shalim raTorah yizdakech libam v'ruchom v'nafshoisam l'kedusha v'Torah. having a day of no secular learning, just Limudei Kodesh, adds to them Kedusha V'Tayru. B'vad kol zeh, hari mechur ha'davar lizdamos le'nochrim sheyom rishon yechoshev yom menucha. Just to have Sunday off, because everybody has Sunday off. Everybody, to you, should be Kal Yisrael. What Goyim do on Sunday should be as relevant to you as what they do on December 25th. It's not part of who you are. It's very important for us to realize the Razev called Echad Ve'echad Roya Bachush Asher Hizdamros La'anochri Chorv Es Kol Inyan HaKedusha Ba'Ta'ara V'noim Amidos Midoros Elo Babaseinu Rabim. This need to find favor and be compatible to our non-Jewish neighbors actually chisels away at the foundation of Yiddishkeit. May we be Zeicha to stand Mekudosh v'Nivdal Mikol Ha'amim HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Boicher Bonu Mikol Ha'amim v'Nasan Lanu Es Torah Seves.